Delivered our 22-23 budget. We now have our General Council meeting, a little bit off our schedule of meetings to allow obviously some councillors to go to different events, including me. Councillors, we have a leave of absence previously required by Councillor Moriarty that we granted at that previous meeting that we'll deal with in a minute, the minutes of which. So would someone like to move Councillor Moriarty's apology, please? Moved by Councillor Burns, seconded Councillor Carpenter, to accept Councillor Moriarty's apology for today. We acknowledge and continue to acknowledge, as we did this morning, the Western Kungaloo people as the native title claimants of this local government area, and we pay our respects. Councillors, I suppose, housekeeping we might do before we start, provided we finish in a meaningful period of time. We did not provide lunch today, so you're at your own devices a little bit later on, so we can certainly work around that. But councillors, a confirmation of minutes of the previous meeting is the 15th of June, one for which I was here for part of, and certainly Councillor Deputy Mayor, Councillor Roll chaired on the 15th of June. Would someone like to move those, please? Moved by Councillor Brimley-Combe, seconded Councillor Carpenter. Deputy Mayor, I don't know, was there anything there particularly that you wanted to comment on? I think it's accurate reflection of the meeting. All right, councillors, if there's nothing there, it's been moved and seconded. All in favour? Against? Thank you, councillors. Carried. Any business arising out of those minutes? Okay, councillors, we'll move on. Review of outstanding meeting actions that have been provided there. That still is a relatively short update there. No questions there. All right, councillors, and you know certainly the process in terms of any change or addition to agenda items, you're aware of that process, and you can make application to do that. Any conflicts of interest in the agenda today? None that you've had, Marnie, prior? Thank you. All right, councillors, thank you. No petition, CEO? Okay. All right, sorry. Yep. Having dealt with Councillor Moriarty's leave of absence, are there any other leave of absences required in the next few months? Sorry, Councillor Carpenter, I nearly deprived you of that.
Yeah, Mr Mayor, I seek leave of absence for the meeting to be held on the 29th of July.
29th. All right, councillors, would someone like to move that on behalf of Councillor Carpenter? Moved by Councillor Curtis, seconded Councillor Brimley-Combe, that we grant leave of absence to Councillor Carpenter for the meeting of the 29th of July. That's been moved and seconded. All in favour? Against? Thank you, councillors. Thank you, Councillor Carpenter. No others? All good. Councillors, our decision action reports today. The first one obviously sits in our communities section under General Manager John McDougall. So, John, I know Emma is sitting in the hot seat already, but you might do the introductions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Good morning, councillors, and just want to acknowledge my fellow GM here, her last meeting, and that was a wonderful morning tea and celebration of her time, so congratulations, Michelle. Councillors, we have this is really a formality, a procedural report, this one here, and I have got our acting manager of Parks and Recreation, Emma Tierney, here to walk through the report. You will remember though, some time ago, we'd actually had a negotiation with Bob Track, our local swim contractor here for the pool at Emerald, and as part of that negotiation there was a negotiation that occurred, and as part of that negotiation there was an agreement to basically write off some debt with some monies owed to council from that perspective. So in order for auditing purposes to be fully transparent and open with that process, we needed to bring this recommendation to you today to clean up that process. So I'll allow Emma to walk through the report, but I'm happy to take any questions as I was directly involved with with that negotiation as well. Thank you, Emma.
Thank you, General Manager McDougall. Through the Chair, the purpose of this report is to seek Council approval to write off the outstanding debt of $67,331.58 from Bob Track Swimming School to Central Highlands Regional Council for the rental of the Emerald Aquatic Centre slides. The write-off of this payment was negotiated as part of the lease renewal with the Emerald Aquatic Centre in July last year. As detailed in the report, during the negotiations between General Manager McDougall and Bob Tract, under the instruction of acting CEO at the time, Michael Parker, it was noted that Council had approved a COVID compensation payment to Bob Tract in the amount of $67,000 as part of settlement. With the outstanding payment that was owing to Council from Bob Tract for the rental of the slides, the parties agreed to waive both payments in full, resulting in almost net zero outcome. In order to resolve the cancellation of the invoice for the slide rental payment, Council's finance team have advised that a formal decision of Council is necessary to complete this process. It is of interest to both parties that this matter be finalised before the 30th of June 2022 in order to process within the same financial year. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Right. Councillors, questions? And as John explained, I guess in that long discussion and renegotiation of those lease arrangements, that was certainly part of the consideration. So is there anything else, John, that you needed to add? Or?
No, through the Chair, no, thank you.
All right. If Councillors happy with that? All right. Councillors, the recommendation is there that we approve the write-off the outstanding debt of the $67,331.58 issued under that invoice number 7832 dated 29 July 2020 to get it done obviously in this financial year to have that appropriately recorded. So someone happy to move that? Moved by Councillor Burns, seconded by Councillor Daniels. All in favour? Against? Thank you, Councillors. Carried. Thank you very much, Emma. All right, Councillors, our next report comes under Corporate Service, a monthly financial report that certainly comes under General Manager Margaret Gatt. There's been a little bit of a some small discussion today after the big presentation this morning, but no doubt an important one. And thank you very much, Margaret. If you could do the introductions.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. Good morning, councillors. Without further ado, I'll hand over to Helen Kirby, our Acting Manager Finance, to take us through the monthly finance report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark, and through the Chair, and good morning, councillors. This report presents a snapshot of Council's year-to-date financial performance and position to the 31st of May. The report discusses budget variances that have been measured against Budget Review 3, which was the adopted budget applicable to the end of May. Budget Review 4 was not adopted until the 15th of June. The Statement of Comprehensive Income, which provides information on income and expenses recorded to the end of May, reports an operating surplus of $1.287 million. This represents an increase in the surplus of approximately $377,000 against the Budget Review 3 surplus of $910,000. The increase in the surplus results from an increase in operating revenue, offset partially by an increase in operating expenditure. Actual operating revenue has exceeded budget by approximately $2.7 million due to the net impact of an increase in the timing and the amount of the 2022-23 Financial Assistance Grant prepayment by $5.6 million. This is offset partially by a reduction in recoverable works revenue of $3.4 million as a result of wet weather delays. Actual operating expenditure at the end of May exceeds budget by $2.3 million. The key drivers behind this result are an increase of $4.1 million in materials and services expenditure, which is offset partially by a reduction in employee costs of approximately $1.8 million, due largely to delays in recruitment. The significant variance to budget for materials and services expenditure relates mainly to increased costs associated with increased external plant hire, additional road maintenance work, and urgent maintenance required for the water treatment plant and network. As some of these additional costs were not known at Budget Review 4, there is a risk that the estimated operating surplus for the financial year may be impacted. The operating activity statements for Council's 5 business activities show mixed operating results at the end of May. The airport business has exceeded the forecast year-to-date operating surplus by approximately $390,000. The waste business operating surplus is down on budget by 42%. The combined water and sewerage businesses have recorded an operating deficit of $179,000 against a forecast surplus of $1.2 million at the end of May due to higher than budgeted maintenance costs. The statement of financial position, or the balance sheet, shows cash holdings of almost $95 million at the end of May, with BR3 indicating that cash balances will reduce to around $85 million by the end of the financial year. The final level of cash holdings at the 30th of June will be impacted by cash payments and receipts during June. These inflows and outflows will include the drawdown of the planned and approved Queensland Treasury borrowings, the repayment of the quarry and sale yards loans, and further spend on the capital works program, and also a reduction in debtor balances. Combined arrears relating to rates and charges stand at approximately $11.7 million at the end of May. Actual year-to-date capital expenditure at the end of May is just under $45 million, excluding commitments. The total value of the capital program is approximately $65 million, which was reduced to just over $61 million at BR4. It is expected that by the end of June, this total revised estimate spend will be realised. Council still continues to track costs incurred in relation to the COVID-19 pandemic. Total year-to-date expenditure to the end of May of just over $113,000 has been recorded, which mostly relates to cleaning of council facilities and buildings. Council spending with local businesses during May outstripped spend from outside the region, while local spend is running just ahead of outside spend for the financial year to date. That concludes the presentation of the report, and a recommendation is made that Council adopt the monthly finance report for the period ended 31st of May 2022. I'm happy to take any questions in relation to the information presented.
Thank you, Helen. Just a question to kick off before I ask councillors. In the operating income and expenses for the airport, obviously the DAS grant funding is still part of, we account for it for the RASI funding that's actually passed back to the airline. Does that go away, I guess, at some point? Sorry.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Yes. No, I do believe that it does, and this last payment was a bit of a rush in lieu of the election that was happening. No, we would envisage that that will discontinue.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, councillor's question?
Through you, Mayor. Helen, are you noticing a difference? I just need to get down to it. The procurement activities, are you noticing now that suppliers can self-invite? Is there an increase in your, or is it too soon to tell?
Exactly right, and I guess, as we're leading into the end of financial year, things are fairly slow anyway, so we'll probably be able to assess that better
On in
next year.
New year. Thank you.
That's right.
Thanks, Helen. Any other questions? It's been a big financial day, looking at a lot of numbers for a long time. All right, well then, councillors, look, the recommendation is there that the Central Highlands Regional Council adopt the monthly financial report for period ended 31 May. Is someone happy to move that? Moved by Councillor Brimblecombe, second Councillor Burns. All in favour? Against? Thank you. Carried. Thank you very much, Helen. I'm not sure whether anything's actually over on a day like today. It's only the start of the next one, I think. That's probably the way it works. Thank you, Helen. Councillors, the next agenda item is a Customer and Commercial Services report on the service level agreement with the Central Highlands Queensland Housing Company Limited. So I'll hand over to General Manager Michelle Webster. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and good morning, Mayor and councillors. So this report, councillors, is you will be aware that there's been a formal service level agreement between Council and the Central Highlands Queensland Housing Company Limited for a couple of years now, and the current existing service level agreement is due to expire on the 30th of June 2022. This report proposes to Council that we extend the service level agreement to the 1st of January 2023. Council may be aware that the level of support that's provided by particularly the Property Services section of Council is in regards to Secretariat support to the company. They also look after operational matters associated with the housing company properties in dealing with property managers and also dealing with body corporate activities for the 6 units at Blackwater as well. So this service level agreement just formalises that in-kind support that's provided by council officers to the company. The recommendation is there to endorse the service level agreement between council and the company for the period to 1 January 2023 and to delegate to the Chief Executive Officer to enter into the service level agreement on behalf of council.
All right. Thanks, Michelle. And councillors, you'll have seen through the agenda there's a sequence of reports here that this will relate to. So I guess in some sort of context there's some methodology, I guess, in these reports being consecutive after each other. So in the first instance, obviously the expiry of this service level agreement needs to be, I guess you'd say, considered in view of the time taken for any subsequent decisions in relation to the other reports. Is there any questions?
Yes,
Sorry, go, Councillor Swiper, yeah.
So, yes, that was sort of really what my question was going to be about. Like, I kind of thought if the other agenda item had been prior to this one, it might have been more in sync, because I've read the agenda, obviously, but, yeah, I just thought these agenda items were out of sync. I mean, this would have been better explained if the other agenda item had been first on the agenda. So this really is just extending this for a period of time, for 6 months basically, isn't it? For 6 months to action the other agenda item, basically.
If I can respond, thank you, Councillor Seifer, for your question. I suppose irrespective of Council's decision, there still is a level of operational support that is required to the housing company. So depending upon what decision Council may make in the subsequent report that you will consider, there still is that level of operational support that still will need to occur.
For the wind-up period, if
Not necessarily. Well, if council doesn't agree with the recommendation that's before it's today, there still is ongoing need to support from those operational matters in regards to the properties of the housing company.
I'm just wondering why it is. Well, I know. Yeah, I'm just wondering why the 1st of January 2023. Like, why isn't it further than that? Like, is it 6 months on the assumption that the housing company is going to wind up? Is that the reason, basically?
I'll take that one, General Manager, if that's okay. So one way or another, no matter what the decision of the next item is, the service level agreement will have to be extended. Depending on what happens with the next item, there would need to be there may need to be another extension prior to the January period. But I take your point that if we had considered them in the opposite direction, that would have been a little simpler. But I think the motion can stand, Mr Chair, and then if needs be, then another motion would come to extend further if that needed to happen prior to January.
Well, to answer that question, I guess it's a case of the operational requirement would be that we do it in this order, notwithstanding the decision for the next agenda item. So I guess because as of 3 or 4 days' time there is no agreement, and that would not be a preference that we would have, it would be certainly a need to do that. So Councillor Seifer just saying if it goes to 1 January, I would guess it wasn't a premonition about the next one. It was just more a case of in the first instance in terms of the obligations of the office holders and certainly body corporates and things like that, we certainly need the continuing service agreement to get us to at least that point, and then deal with any outcome after that. So yeah, it could have been either way, but that was probably the thinking. So, Councillor Daniels.
Oh, thank you, Chair. I was just really going to say, to save a future report, why wouldn't we just make it for 12 months? Because if the company gets wound up, then obviously it's voided as well. It's a funny date there. Thank you.
No, thank you, Councillor Daniels. I guess it could be 12 months if you wanted to alter the service level agreement and just make it for 12 months. And obviously, if it's not required, there's no reversed gear needed. I guess that could be appropriate. Councillors, would that help if it was just made for 12 months?
Yeah, well, it's irrelevant, but I mean, it just is an extremely odd date. And I thought 12 months would be.
Okay, well, let's see if we can get the oddness out of it.
Oddly placed on it.
So 30 June 2023.
Do you want to check?
Okay, so that's in the resolution, yeah?
Yeah.
All right, someone happy to move that? Moved by Councillor Brimblecombe, seconded Councillor Burns. So the recommendation sits above it, which has had 1 January 2023. This one now goes to 30 June 2023. All right, so it's been moved and seconded. All in favour? Against? Thank you, councillors. Carried. Thank you, General Manager Michelle. Which obviously then clearly leads into the next agenda item 11.3.2, which is relating to that voluntary liquidation proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So, Councillor, the report before you now is a report which seeks your consideration of a proposal for the voluntary liquidation of the Central Highlands Queensland Housing Company Limited. As Council is the only permanent member under the Constitution, Council actually holds the right of consideration regarding whether to progress the voluntary liquidation to enable the winding up of the company. Councillors will be familiar that the company was created in 2012 to provide a local response to affordable housing needs in the Central Highlands region. The activity sought to promote better access to affordable housing in the Central Highlands in response to the mining boom within the region. The housing company, over probably a period of 18 months to 2 years, has been undertaking what I call a navel gaze in regards to itself and the future. And in doing that, it engaged McGrath Nicol consultants to work with the board in regards to looking at a number of options, and those options being to take the company much bigger than it currently is, to remain as is, or to move forward with the voluntary liquidation of the company. The report there are a number of reasons outlined within the report. The company currently holds housing stock of 6 units in Blackwater at the Aurora Close complex, which were gifted to the housing company by Economic Development Queensland. It also has 6 houses in Blackwater, which were purchased from CHRC Mining Company, and it has a block of units in Anarchy Street in Emerald, acquired through discussions with a BMA and at a value of less than market value. But throughout the period that the housing company has operated, it's also being provided with donations from council, initially $100,000 seed funding. Then council also provided $110,000 to assist in the acquisition of the CHRC housing, and then $370,000 for the purchase of Anarchy Street in Emerald. Council will also be familiar in a previous report that came to you in regards to resolution of some constitution change for the company, whereby originally the constitution was structured that should the company be wound up, its assets could go to any like organisation within Australia. That constitutional change put in then a hierarchy in regards to locality, so that the assets of the company, should council agree to move forward with the voluntary liquidation, would in the first instance go to a like company within the Central Highlands local government area, then Central Highlands, then Queensland, then Australia. But that would be a matter for the liquidator who would need to be appointed to facilitate the winding up. there's approximately about $250,000 cash held in the company bank at the time of writing the report. Those funds also would, the housing assets as well as the cash, would go to a like organisation. So the recommendation before you today, Council, is for the member, so for Central Highlands Regional Council as the member, passing a resolution to wind up the Central Highlands Housing Company Limited voluntarily, and that would be subject to a majority of the directors making a declaration of solvency of the company, and that a copy of the approval being given to the company secretary or the chairman of directors. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, gentlemen. And from as chair of the Central Highlands Queensland Housing Company, those directors indicated certainly their intention to find out from council whether they were supportive of this. That was certainly their resolve was certainly that this was the best option, but to make sure that we check in with council to ensure that they're comfortable with that. There is a certain formality about the fact that this is always called a voluntary liquidation, which I don't particularly like, but it's the process. However, I think having spoken to companies like McGrath, Nicol and others who are familiar with this process, they're very keen to work. It's not something that's done particularly at arm's length, that is so exclusive that we don't have sort of some input into perhaps a preference to where the assets might go. So that opportunity is there, and they've indicated if they were particularly the opportunity to liquidate the assets, they would certainly be very interested in what council had to say as a possible beneficiary. So whilst it is a very, very clear and pronounced process, there is an opportunity to certainly influence. We've done that certainly through the change to the Constitution by certainly making it easier for I suppose, the hierarchy of potential distribution to at least start with local companies. And as you can see, it's been quite solvent. There's a good cash position certainly that's been respectful during the process of the operation of the housing company. And this is a case of our board thinking that these assets would be better utilised by an organisation who might be focused on this as part of their core business, because it seems very problematic to try and increase the capacity, as General Manager Michelle has said. It's probably a very timely addition to some stocks that certainly there are some organisations within the region, in the community, that could certainly, I suppose, manage well and still have our communities get the benefit from those. So that was certainly the thinking. So over to councillors for questions. Oh, Councillor Simon.
Thank you. Just a point of clarification, a like-minded company could acquire these assets and there is no stipulation that they have to operate those assets as affordable housing, that they can actually sell those assets? Is that correct?
Thanks for the question, Councillor Cypher. So, yeah, the Constitution stipulates, and the liquidator will be guided by the company constitution in regards to making a decision in regards to the like organisation. I would, probably would need to seek some legal clarification in that, but I would think that once it's transferred to the like organisation, first of all, there'll be a determinant in regards to it is like and similar to the housing company now. They would be determined by their constitution and their legal instruments in place for that organisation.
Yeah, I certainly can't add anything to that. I understand the question, but it's a case of it will turn on words, and the determinant, that's where the voluntary liquidator will have, I suppose, an opportunity to liaise with the housing company. But other than that, it would be on the basis of affordability. It was certainly built into the Constitution. The Charter clearly, indicates the limitations that the Central Highlands Housing Company has. Otherwise, we could have liquidated the assets, I guess, if that was the option that we had. That certainly was not available to us, so it'll be just constitutionally where we can influence that. I concur with General Manager Michelle. It's a case of then looking at the constitution of arguably whom might be the beneficiary, if any, of these properties as to how they manage them. I'm not sure how we would get we would be literally on an application basis only seeing what their charter would do. But if it was an Anglicare, or I'm not suggesting it is, but an organisation like that, then it would be up to the voluntary administrator to make a recommendation. Any other questions, councillors? I just probably do need to reinforce it. Certainly, what General Manager Michelle has said, there's been, the independent directors have been really determined to make sure that we've examined all the options about growing the business or certainly being able to influence more housing property. And through their experience, and certainly the council representatives that you've had there, it seems, we've investigated things like some of the public housing we've written to the Minister, certainly some of the housing that council has. So all those options have been countenanced and looked at in terms of, the business case for that. And unfortunately, there are a number of either restrictions or conditions that don't allow us to do that in its current form. So this was certainly the determination. So from a housing company perspective, they would be seeking that if we could. Their recommendation is to council, obviously, that we do go to this voluntary administration liquidation route to at least make sure that the housing stays as reasonably close as possible in our community, and the community does get the benefit of that, given the investment that certainly Central Highlands Regional Council has made in the housing company. So it's the best option we have. Other questions? All right. Well, look, councillors, the recommendation is there that we approve the member passing a resolution to wind up the Central Highlands Queensland Housing Company Limited voluntarily, subject to a majority of the directors making a declaration of solvency, and 2, a copy of the approval being given to the company secretary or chairman of directors. Someone happy to move that? Sorry, Councillor Burns? Happy to move that, Councillor Burns. Okay. Seconder? Councillor Curtis. All in favour? Against? Will you want vote recorded, Councillor Sobber? Yeah. Thank you. Carried, councillors. Thank you. And thank you, Michelle. I think I'm making sure, General Manager, that you didn't go out without having to do a workload today, so which is great. 11.3.3 talks about the Emerald Airport Advisory Committee review in terms of reference change. It comes under Michelle's hand again, and the eloquent Solomon Kloppers is here as well to talk to that report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and I'll hand over to Solomon Kloppers, Manager of Airport, to discuss his report in regards to the Advisory Committee annual evaluation and some proposed changes to the terms of reference for Council's consideration. Thanks, Solomon.
Morning to the Chair, Councillors and colleagues. I too would like to recognise the massive contribution our GM have made to our community, and especially the airport, as this item relates to that. This morning we bring before Council the endorsement of the Emerald Airport Advisory Committee evaluation for this financial year in 2022, as well as the terms of reference amendments proposed by the committee. I propose that we deal with this in 2 parts. First, the evaluation, and then the recommendations flowing from that, with the indulgence of the Chair, of course. The Council will note from the item that the Emerald Airport Strategic Business Plan puts in place a structure of evaluation for the Emerald Airport Advisory Committee. That's an annual evaluation. And the intention of that was to make sure that the committee self-evaluates against the terms of reference and be constantly mindful of whether it is reaching its actual purpose. The evaluation report is attached, and Council will note that it tracks measurements such as how many items were raised, how many items were raised by stakeholders, so that it's not just from Council's point of view that items are being raised. The number of items actually raised and dealt with, security, safety items, items that deal with future planning. There's a sustainability measure in there, attendance, quorums, all sorts of measures. And those measures are specifically chosen because it relates back in the terms of reference to very specific outcomes that the committee is intended to meet. So from that point of view, I think I'll maybe just wait for a moment's pause here, and if there is any questions regarding the measures used or proposals for additional measures, take those on board. Cool. Moving on. Although the committee obviously considers, as per the report, that it is meeting its purpose, a number of amendments to especially the terms of reference was proposed by the committee. The evaluation recommends, in the evaluation reports, there are not just the amendments that are proposed, but also the committee included a little bit of a narrative as to why they included or are recommending for inclusion certain amendments, but also, importantly, some that were made that they chose not to accept. Council might have a different view on those, and that's why the committee, in the interest of transparency, included even the things that they decided against. First of all, there's the renaming of stakeholders. There's two kinds of changes in there. The first one is that regular passenger transport operator stakeholder representatives, long term, have access to a number of airport committees from an operational point of view, and whether those are airport user committees, safety and security, the emergency meetings. These are colloquially now known as the baggage handlers. So the airlines, of course, have got access to council, the organisation, the airport, as well as to elected officials. So this is not an attempt to limit or to cut any of those avenues for airlines off. It's proposed, therefore, that the actual membership in future consists of the general aviation representatives, airport business user representatives. We've got general community representatives, and then business outside of the airport. So business inside and outside, community, and the general aviation stakeholder representatives. Also, in a similar line, the committee considered the terminology used, and it's proposing that we introduce a terminology or a term called stakeholder representatives, where in the previous or in the current terms of reference, the terms of reference refer to everyone as elected representatives and elected officials, and those two terms are really close to each other, so the committee is proposing to create a different terminology for basically community representatives. There's also a proposal in there to introduce a 3-year term limit on stakeholder representatives, so not elected officials, but the community representatives. Furthermore, the committee proposed to make it clear that the mayor is the chair, but also, as council would know, that we had a change of membership during the year, and the committee reflected on that very strongly, in that the terms of reference does not specify the methodology or the mechanism whereby new people come on the committee or people can leave, and therefore there's a proposal in there that a EOI, expression of interest process, gets followed, as well as that previous non-successful applicants can come into the pool. And that was made so that we do not, if we in times where we do have a number of people moving on from the committee, tendering their resignations, we do not have community members that constantly look at the paper and say, well, I tried to go for this, I tried to go for it 2 months ago, they didn't want me, now they're looking for someone again. So it gives the committee the option to pool a number of applicants over time and to consider those people with their approval, of course, as part of the pool when membership are considered. Then there's a footnote recognition of the Local Government Act, an administrative move or addition, and then a change, the final one, a change of terminology from members being re-elected to members being reappointed. And that's, that is due to the to the fact that the members to that committee do not get re-elected, they get reappointed by council. Council are the elected officials, so it's a terminology change. Maybe what I should do is pause there and take any questions if there are.
Sorry.
Solomon, just on your quorum and on page 161. So your quorum is only 3 members of 10. 10 members on the, usually it's half or half plus 1.
Through the chair, the committee proposed that mainly because a number of the stakeholder representatives have got positions elsewhere, and at times it is very difficult to get all of them together. Although the record shows in the evaluation very often and usually as a rule we do have a quorum, the committee was just, I guess, hesitant or the committee did not want a meeting to not have a quorum, just as an example, because 2 or 3 people could not attend, especially the stakeholder representatives. But that is certainly something that we can change in this when council should council want to adopt it.
I think to add to that, Councillor Rolfe, I think the indication was, and maybe there needs to be some more words there, but that there wouldn't be a meeting without at least the chair, at least a councillor, and at least a stakeholder representative. And you will see in the assessment where it's columnised that there's generally not a full complement of people there, but I guess those words should be changed to reflect that the quorum should, notwithstanding the quorum, they should, those stakeholders must be representative in any quorum. Because otherwise it's really non-representative as an advisory committee, so it needs to have some more words there for sure. So that's something we could look at, Solomon, yeah.
Another one, please,
Absolutely.
for clarification. So you're saying that the CHRC councillors will be appointed for a term of 3 years. The next point is members can be reappointed. So is that applicable to all members, which as the councillors, as they can be reappointed?
Through the chair, the intention of the committee was that in the current terms of reference, there's no maximum term limit, and therefore, even though councillors, of course, come in and leave as per the wider electoral process, the stakeholder representatives in the current terms of reference are de facto there forever. And this is an attempt by the committee to create a movement, I guess, of different people through the committee at times, and to force new people to come in and new people to leave. Every year, however, council and every new council can appoint or direct, I guess, different councillors to different committees in council's discretion. But the committee in this item was specifically after setting a maximum term limit for stakeholder non-elected officials.
Okay.
I was just going to suggest, sorry, put stakeholder members.
Yeah.
Council members and stakeholder members.
Any other questions, councillors? We'll keep moving. Well, thank you for pausing too, Solomon. Allows us to catch up on a bit of it. Oh, waiting for me, sorry, go again. Solomon, you have more to obviously keep going with you.
Through the chair, thank you.
Oh, that's it. Oh, sorry. I was waiting for your golden tones there, Solomon, and thought you were writing. No, well, Councillor, that's it. We have no questions. Solomon, how will we see those slight changes?
Mr. Mayor, what we can do is we can obviously either, depending on what proper process is, bring the item back, or perhaps my proposal would be in the resolution, include something like perhaps with changes made as directed. And what we can do is we can, through a council note to councillors, circulate it again.
Councillors, your direction there, happy to see it. Just to adjust this with the endorsed changes and amendments to proposed amendments? Okay.
Yes.
So, Marnie, if you could just add in course, have you already done that? Yep, following some of the amendments, okay.
Sorry, Mr Mayor, can we just reconfirm the amendments?
Reconfirm, there's a couple there. One is in relation to the quorum, is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, so that would be at least present, the first point made. The second one would be under member appointments and tenure, make sure that it reflects stakeholder members would be, or representatives would be subject to the 3-year term limit. And then where members can be reappointed, make sure that it's clear that it's any member can be reappointed.
Yep. Because currently the term of reference says 6 people is the quorum. That's what it expresses. And
Yes.
then it should be made up of at least.
At least.
Yep, okay.
Yes.
Have you got to reword the resolution?
No, well, it's endorsed, subject to the following amendments.
So 6 person quorum.
Yeah.
Yeah. It doesn't need to be amended. Quorum is 6 with at least.
Just a clarification around that quorum, it wasn't.
Yeah, the terms of reference states it's 6 members must be present. And the reference to that particular quorum was an additional that of that 6 must be the chair, a councillor, and at least one stakeholder representative.
Oh, yeah, that's really listed there.
Yes, through the chair, so it's more stringent.
Yep.
It's not easier, it's more difficult.
Can I just confirm, are we saying a minimum of 6 to be present at the meeting and a minimum of 3 for the quorum?
That's, no.
Or the opposite?
The quorum is 6 still, but of the 6, that's a quorum, that must include the chair, at least one councillor, and a stakeholder representative.
Yes, one of each category of member.
So then a meeting can't continue without there being a quorum of 6, and there must be the chair, a councillor, and one of the stakeholder members.
Just some clarification. Can the chair be nominated by the 6 at the meeting? Or is it the chairperson of that committee?
Because the terms of reference would potentially not necessarily recognise a mayor or chair as the councillor. The chair has got to be a councillor.
Yes.
So the chair has to be, that chair has got to be obviously a councillor, at least one councillor as well, and then at least one stakeholder representative.
I said, normally it's one set person for the chairperson.
Yes.
I'm just checking that if that chairperson is unable to attend,
Yep.
then that quorum can then nominate a chair, which will be a councillor.
Yes.
If I can just add, the terms of reference, Councillor Brimblecombe, indicate that the chairperson is a councillor of Central Highlands Regional Council.
Right. So how are you going now, Marnie?
It's in.
Yeah. Okay.
Selim, could you just confirm that it's correct up on the screen?
stakeholder representative group?
Not only a stakeholder representative group, but the chair, at least one councillor and at least one stakeholder representative. But the basic amendment would be on page 161 under quorum. It would be something like the quorum of the Emerald Airport Advisory Committee will be at least 3 members, or 3 members made up of at least the following
Well,
membership types.
That's then changing the quorum, which is 6, is that correct?
Yeah.
No,
As drafted in the terms of reference, the quorum is 3.
Yes.
I thought it says here.
No, it's 3. This is
So
what,
that would represent a change if we were to make it 6, of
Well,
which those 3 had to be part.
In the assessment 3, a meeting attendance, a minimum of 6 attending members is set up by the terms of reference.
what page are you reading that off, please, Kerry?
Off the assessment, I think, hang on, page 157, Councillor
Oh,
Cyber.
157.
It's in the assessment, effectiveness of Airport Advisory Committee. In the second part of that, it says assessment 3, meeting attendance, desired outcome, members regularly attending meetings. And I've read through these, and it said a minimum of 6 attending members is set by the terms of reference. A full meeting will consist of 11 noted members. So I assumed there was 6, and of the 6, I thought the discussion we had around the change was about making sure of the 6, they had to be a chair, a councillor and a stakeholder, so that I guess it just wasn't everyone else turning up there. There were 6 people, so there was a meeting. Well, that can't happen.
yes, that's correct.
So the clarification that councillors are asking for is relevant, because there's a bit of confusion then, because I thought the quorum was 6.
In the item there, amended to a 6-person quorum would be appropriate, of which must include the chair, councillor and stakeholder representative. That is my understanding of what council is saying. So we'll have 6 people minimum. Of the 6 people, it will obviously be the chair, that must be a councillor, and at least a stakeholder representative. The purpose being so we don't just meet with ourselves.
Exactly.
So just through the chair, because I'm totally confused. So on page 161 of the agenda item, which is the terms of reference, and I'm assuming they're the draft terms of reference,
Yes.
so probably we should have had draft across them. Halfway down that page, quorum, it reads, the quorum for the Emerald Airport Advisory Committee will be 3 members made up of the chair, at least 1 councillor and at least 1 stakeholder representative. So the amendment, is that going to be the quorum should be the quorum for the Emerald Airport Advisory Committee will be 6 members? Okay, so that's the change we're making.
Yeah,
So we've gone from the recommendation of the advisory committee for 3, a quorum of 3, to a quorum of 6. Is that correct?
Of which 3 must be
3
the chair,
must be
councillor and a stake. So as per,
at least,
that's
yeah.
what's up on the screen is the
Yeah,
proposal.
so that's what we're changing, from 3 to 6.
Yes.
That's a big jump. I thought we're trying to simplify it and make the meeting easier by having 3, a quorum of 3. But we're not?
Through the chair, we weren't trying to make it, or the committee wasn't trying to make it easier. They were trying to make it stricter, so
Oh,
that
right,
we
okay.
don't just have
Yeah.
council and councillors
Yeah, right.
attending.
Okay, thanks. That's the clarification, because I was absent from that meeting, sorry, I was an apology at that meeting. So I'm just trying to figure out, because,
Yeah.
I'm just trying to figure out why there was that confusion. So thank you for that.
I'm not sure, though, that the quorum has only been 3 previously. I thought it was 6, and this is just a typo.
Guys, I'll put my hand up. I retyped this, so
Yeah.
the fault here was probably mine, so I'll probably type the 3 over the 6.
Yeah, it should have been that the committee will be 6 members made up of at least the chair, 1 councillor and a stakeholder representative. Right.
That's clear.
Right, okay. Well, no, thank you, councillor Seifert. That made it, constant questioning. You've got it right, and we'll get there. Yeah, no, that's good. It was a bit confusing, so. All right.
And through the chair, we also, again, Solomon, if I could just ask, the second change around member tenure, is that correct on screen, or does it need to be more specific? So endorse the terms of reference with the change around the 3 years?
Yes, that will be fine.
Okay, councillors, come for that? All good? Right. Okay. All right, councillors. So the recommendation there is that adjusted one, that slightly changed one. Someone happy to move that? Moved by councillor Rolfe. Second, councillor Burns. All in favour? Against? Thank you. Thank you, Solomon. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, CEO. Thank you, Marnie. Right. It's all right when we all talk, but someone's got to write it down, and I think you will go home and I've got to sit with Marnie. So, all right, councillors, thank you for those reports. Corporate services is our next report. These are record of proceedings. So this certainly sits under Margaret's hand again, and I know Clinton is here, so thank you, Margaret.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'll just hand straight over to Clinton, councillors, to take us through the minutes of our recent ICT Steering Committee. Thanks, Clinton.
Through the Chair, thank you, General Manager Gatt. To talk to the key updates from the meeting held on the 10th of June. The committee supported the decision to progress with the preferred supplier for a contractor management solution at a project briefing session on the 6th of May. Since then, initial contract decisions have been progressed by the Manager of Safety, and we are currently awaiting the budget allocation prior to entering contract. The second item was the electronic pre-start pilot has been extended to be completed by the 30th of September. With council awaiting the supplier to attend site and to install the devices in the identified fleet and plant for that pilot to be able to commence. The Enterprise Content Management Transition Project is progressing following the appointment of a project manager who has developed a detailed project management plan. And just for clarity, that project is the upgrade and transition to the cloud of Council's electronic document management system, and will also include the integration with the wider One Council platform, as well as improvements to Council's record-keeping processes and procedures. The next two items relate to cybersecurity, with the ICT team working in collaboration with the Water Utilities business area to come up with a plan to mitigate the findings of the operational technology vulnerability assessment that was completed on the SCADA network. Secondly, a tender has been awarded to Riot Solutions for managed security services, which will include the provision of 24/7 network monitoring. And that contract will also allow the provider the ability to identify and mitigate cybersecurity incidents as they occur outside of business hours. The committee also supported a recommendation for several web-based projects to be delivered as a program of online service initiatives due to their interdependencies. And that will include the likes of approved projects being One Council e-portals and an online booking system, as well as some future initiatives that will be coming through the pipeline around website intranet redesigns. Two future business projects were also presented to the committee for decision. To touch briefly, the first of those was an online booking system. This was a follow-up to provide further analysis of options, as well as a plan on how to progress, to which the committee supported that online booking system for council facilities and open spaces to proceed, and that will form part of the online services program. The second was Weaver Reconciliation Action Plan software. So it was tabled for council to look at adopting a dedicated tool to better manage and measure the current and future reconciliation action plans, and the committee supported that tool to be planned, procured and delivered. That summarises the key points from that committee meeting, and happy to take any questions from councillors.
Thanks very much, Clinton. Councillors, Councillor Daniels, yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Clinton, just a question around the website redevelopment and the e-portals. Are you going to undertake engagement, I guess, with it, whether it be internal and external, to make sure that what we deliver is in line with, I guess, what the needs are, the user's needs? Thank you.
Through the Chair, I'll make a comment and then I might throw to General Manager of Customer and Commercial Services as well. So the website sides of things is in the initial concept stage, but it definitely does include internal and external consultation processes to ensure that, yeah, what we are delivering meets the expectations of the community and customers, both internal and external. And that will also feed into the online services, like the e-portal side as well.
Thank you, Clinton. And Councillor Daniels, thank you for your question. My understanding is certainly the Manager of Customer Service is working with the Customer Experience Officer in regards to they're working on customer personas, as well as identifying groups of customer types in which to engage with as we move forward with these new tools. So there certainly is a body of work being undertaken in that regard.
Other questions, councillors? All right, thank you very much, Clinton. The recommendation there is certainly that we receive the record of proceedings for that ICT or Information Communications Technology Steering Committee held on 10 June. Is someone happy to move that? Moved by Councillor Bernstein and Councillor Brimblecombe. All in favour? Against? Thank you. Carried, councillors. Thank you very much, Clint. Thank you. Councillors, the next two agenda items is around our community consultation program, and the first one, 13.3, relates to the record of proceedings for the community consultation at Dingo. This certainly sits with Michelle again. Yep. So I'll hand over to Michelle.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Councillors, the first report here is the record of proceedings from the community consultation held in Dingo on Thursday the 9th of June. The minutes, I'll take the minutes as read. There were 3 actions that came from that meeting. The first one being Mayor requesting a meeting with the town planners to discuss issues raised at the Dingo community consultation by landowners affected by mining leases. The second being 60-kilometre signs on the Beef Road at the north of Dingo need to be removed now that roadworks had been completed. And the third matter that we investigate and repair the faulty link in the reply to the Dingo community consultation have your say submission. So that recommendation is there to receive the record of proceedings with those actions listed. Thank you, councillors.
Thank you, Michelle. Councillor Daniels, I'm sure you can add something there to the Jason Steele story.
Yes, you're right. That's exactly what I'm going to talk about. I was just going to say, I think there's probably an action that came out of that, which was really around working, there was sort of some broad discussion around that advocacy, further advocacy, council working with the tourism operators around road, advocacy for road upgrades. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Daniels. I'll speak with the coordinator, area office coordinator and the manager of customer service to get that clarified and actioned.
I would hate for that to, I mean, it's something that the Mayor and I need to have a discussion about, but I would hate for it to fall off the priority list. Thank you.
Yep. I think there was the Jason Steele who was mentioned in that report and certainly recorded the minutes there was in relation to his, I suppose, tourism-based business at Red Rock Park there, adjacent to the Blacktown Table and Turnoff, was certainly sharing his experiences with, certainly access to the national park, and certainly they were our I suppose, our advice regarding the Queensland Beef Corridors advocacy prompted that discussion about advocacy, not only it being for a beef product, but certainly the additional tourism opportunities that created. And we certainly made them aware of our experience in the past with the amount of expenditure that the Department of Environment and Science actually share with national parks for access to their parks. So there is an advocacy work position that we can actually keep it advancing there. So, councillors, are there any other questions there? And there is a visit to that region at some point where some of those landholders would like us to go there, so I'll let councillors know when that's on, when that's coordinated. So, councillors, look, that recommendation is there with those CRMs. Is someone happy to move those? Moved by Councillor Brimblecombe, second by Councillor Daniels. All in favour? Against? Thank you, councillors. All right, and obviously 13.3.2 is in relation to the community consultation at Bluff that same day. Thank you. Michelle.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and yes, record of proceedings for the community consultation at Bluff on Thursday, the 9th of June also. There are a number of actions, some 13 odd actions that came out of that meeting. I'm happy to read them all, or I'll just take the report as read, councillors, and the minutes or records of proceedings are attached there for you to certainly ask any questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. I can add certainly to it, I think, and ably on the fact that the Bluff community weren't very happy with a lot of our efforts there, and they're articulated here. It'd be fair to say our CRG representatives, Councillor Moriarty and Councillor Brimblecombe, will be the only two councillors returned by their voting indications because of the work they do there. But it was a case of very much a number or cumulative amount of our engagement with the community perhaps hadn't been met, or certainly some of the members there were unaware of some of the, I guess you'd say, additional work that was planned and potentially to be delivered in the next short period of time. Horizon, I think it is actually doing some significant work there in the, they like to refer it as the wasteland on the loop that is being cleaned up. So there is, the community were pretty keen on seeing, I suppose, from a civic pride perspective, some changes and some extra work done there. So in lieu of some of our communities, personnel that perhaps would have given some answers, there was obviously a number of CRMs, and they relate really to a lot of, you'd say, operational stuff that needs to be done. But generally, I think they wanted to convey to us that they just weren't happy with the level of service they were getting at the time. So I think it'd be very disingenuous. We said that wasn't the case. They've made it pretty clear that they were expecting a level of service. Now, there'll be some explanations for some of the CRMs and what have you, but at the end of the day, that was certainly the broader feeling. But we responded to most or some of the inquiries there, and I think I know our CRM representatives are regularly sort of updating our team in council about the things that the community sees as priorities as well. So things like the water connection across to Tom Old Park, then perhaps what we can do with the land in the middle of the community, and then some general operational activities that I guess we just needed to follow up. Employees based in the community and those not. So that was the style of the day. So the reality is we took very much just notes and details, and certainly we've got some work to do to go back to our community. So, but they really made their point, so the point was well gained. Councillor Roll.
Mayor, can I just ask, maybe of Jason, about a fire break required around a township? Is that?
Actually, I can help Jason if he wants me to. I did actually come back and talk to Glenn Bell about why that burn-off didn't happen, and that was missed by the local brigade. There was a window, and clearly not everyone's resourced to immediately respond to the opportunity. It rained, and then that changed. There was no chance of doing that burn. So from my understanding, and Jason can confirm this, Glenn indicated that there was an opportunity to do it. It was missed, and...
Sorry, obviously. Sorry, Mayor, I read this as being a fire break, as in a ploughed fire break, a graded fire break.
Yeah, it was in the discussion, though, about the fact that there needed to be one because we missed the burn-off.
Okay.
So
right.
I think that was the
Thanks.
context, yeah. Sorry, go on, Jason.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So yes, through the General Manager McDougall's area of disaster management, there's a combination of controlled burns and graded fire breaks they used around some towns within the Central Highlands. Yeah, unfortunately, as the Mayor said, due to weather conditions, the one in Bluff was overlooked.
Nothing else?
Just a quick comment on the recommendations. It appears the REOK tree is not okay at the moment.
Sorry, say that again, Joe?
REOK tree is dropping branches.
Yeah, it's actually a blue tree, Councillor Burns. It's actually at the turn off certainly if the property is opposite the Bluff Mine turnoff on the opposite side of the road, it was a community event to actually highlight that. So it's in a location that obviously it's. So the REO tree is not okay, sure, but they certainly need us to attend to that. So Councillor Carpenter.
Just a minor thing, but on point number 13 for weed control, it says Parkinsonia, but I thought they were talking about Parthenium.
Sorry, say that again, Councillor.
Item number 13.
Yeah,
on page 198.
198. 188. Yeah. The scroll button was starting to burn. Yeah, I think you're right, Councillor Carpenter. I think that was because I think in the handout that we actually distributed that day with the fact sheet, we were actually starting to propagate the insect that was actually living on the Parthenium, and we were actually sharing it with other places. And I think Kathy asked if perhaps they could get access to it. So you're right. Mayor, General Manager Michelle, if that could be in that item there, 13, where it says Kathy Hoare asked the councillors access to the beetle for Parkinsonia, that should be Parthenium. Yep. We did talk about Parkinsonia after that, but that was for Parthenium. Because our ranger team are actually taking some of that bug. Yeah. Or was it Parkinsonia, you think, John?
It wasn't a received cactus, was it?
No, I thought it was Parthenium.
I thought Parthenium, I thought.
Yeah, we can clarify that. We can. Yep.
The one I'm aware of is a rust that they're containing in Parthenium.
Yeah, no, that's all right. We'll clarify that just for the purpose of the minutes, yep. All right, councillors, any other questions? Oh, sorry, go.
Just to, and the other thing, I just wondered what we could do about getting the landholders and things together to try and, it doesn't only apply to that area, it applies to all areas, to combat the spread of these weeds, especially down waterways.
Councillor Carpenter, I think anyone that's driven around just in the last month has seen there are more weeds, and every weed known to man. And look, if people get lulled into a false sense of security when it's dry, it's just these are the times, and that rainfall that falls late in the season, this is what creates the biggest, outbreak that you've ever seen, and just highlights the I suppose the lack of understanding, and certainly the lack of investment in treating this. Problematically, we used to have a stock routes, and what would you call it, a regional services committee, was it, that used to actually discuss these things? There you go, Councillor Rolfe. I was hoping someone had grabbed that.
So, on the 1st of July, next Friday, we have, I go to a meeting in LGAQ House with the local government or councillor members on the Stock Routes Advisory Group, the Government Stock Routes Advisory Group. So it has been on my speaking points on that agenda every time, and we will make note of it again, and we'll talk about it. Thanks.
But Councillor Carpenter, there is no other mechanism that I'm aware of other than, I know the regional, certainly place-based resource groups have got almost all that responsibility shifted now to either local landholder groups or land care groups to deal with their localised outbreaks, but there's absolutely no inclination from government to want to actually sponsor or provide any, consistent approach to weed control, other than the legislative one about the, ownership and tenure of the land that the state holds or local government holds. The locals and private landholders are literally, that's their expense, and you will know, and you've had them speak to us about we can do all we can inside our fence, and then the bloke next door or the watercourse next door, it just comes into us, so I'm spraying it but they're not. I don't know how we deal with that, but as you say, you can only try and make at least a point so we can control at least some of the egress and access to where some of it comes in and out. All right. No more questions, councillors, on that one. That's 13.3.2, so the recommendation is obviously has a whole heap of CRMs attached to that. Is someone happy to move those? Moved by Councillor Carpenter, seconded Councillor Cypher. All in favour? Against? Thank you, councillors, carried. Councillors, there is a late agenda item, and it is quite a procedural one, and that was in relation to the amendment for some fees and charges. Margaret, if you just wanted to elaborate on that.
Thank you. Yes, councillors, there's been a change to the Right to Information Act, and as a result, I mean, I'll just hand over to Helen. Thank you through the chair, sorry. Forgive my breach of protocols there. And as subsequently, we need to amend our fees and charges, but I'll just let Helen speak to a little bit of the report. It's very short. Thanks, Helen.
Thank you, Marg, and through the chair, good afternoon, councillors. The Department of State Development, Infrastructure, Local Government and Planning emailed council on Friday the 24th of June advising of the applicable 2022-23 Right to Information fees that had been determined by the Department of Justice and Attorney General. This advice confirmed that effective from the 1st of July 22, the Right to Information Access application fee will increase from $52.60 to $53.90, and the Right to Information process charge will increase from $8.15 to $8.35. The Right to Information copying charge of 25 cents will remain unchanged. As the fees and charges for 2022-23 were formally adopted by Council on the 23rd of March, the register will need to be updated to include these increases in the Right to Information fees that are currently included in the register. That concludes the presentation of the report, and a recommendation is made that Council adopt these amendments to the 2022-23 fees and charges register. I'm happy to take any questions.
You have the right to ask a question, councillors, free of charge. I think that's pretty straightforward, councillors. Just the timing of this obviously necessitated this being brought to today, and hence the late agenda item, just to obviously rectify that. All right, councillors, someone happy to move the recommendation? Moved by Councillor Burns, seconded Councillor Brimblecombe. All in favour? Against? Thank you, councillors. Thank you, Helen. Thank you, Mark. Councillors, that is it, except for general business. Councillors, all good? Sorry, Councillor Daniels is reaching for the gun. Yep.
I was just really going to highlight, if people haven't already seen it, is the Taste of Australia program on the Central Queensland Highlands that was on at 4:30 last Sunday. You can obviously watch it again on demand. But I just want to say thank you to all the businesses that were involved, Breeze Holidays, like Mum used to make, Costa 2PH and CQA Traders, and obviously Bar Age Grazing. It was great to see all of their stories and see our region showcase so well. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you, Councillor Daniels. And it certainly made, it was on at the right time, because I think there was a lot of steak eaten on Sunday night after watching that, because it was certainly very salivating watching it, that's for sure. Councillors, I suppose we've done this a couple of times, but we should do it in this place to acknowledge our two general managers, Margaret Gatt and Michelle Webster. And I suppose after lots of opportunities to pay proper testimonial to their work here over a long period of time, we always manage to come back into this place and get well and truly back into the work. And in a kind of a way, that is the analogy of how they've approached everything. I mean, our two general managers, and they are our senior general managers, who have led us through lots of good things and lots of trying things, but their approach has always been to get back to work and get that work done. So as a council, we are a better place, certainly for their skills and their management, and particularly their leadership in their teams. But certainly our communities are better off with the influence and the philosophy they brought to their work. So we'll miss them greatly. We wish you all the best in all the things that you choose to do. We know that there's part of us that lives with you and part of you that will always stay with us, but we just wish you the best for the future and hope that the next chapter is just as exciting and just as rewarding as what you've provided to us. So thank you both.
For one more meeting with.
Yes, exactly. Yep. But I'm just allowing for acts of God.
What does that mean?
Well, it could be me that's not here. Councillors, any other general business? All good. Well, councillors, we'll declare the meeting closed at 20 minutes past 12. Thank you, everyone, and we shall meet you back here again in our next meeting in July. Thank you very much.